until finally I just had to say, I need to tell my story, even if it's only to one person. And what I found, Johanna, is the more I tell it, one, the enemy was trying to keep me in shame, but he was also trying to keep me from pointing glory back to God and pointing people back to God. Because when we don't tell our story, right? For me, I thought, well, I need to be able to show that I made it here. Like, I don't want anybody to know about my messy past. I don't want anybody to know like how I got here and how I made all those silly mistakes and how I was just this person I don't even recognize anymore. That's embarrassing. I'm not going to say that, right? But people need to hear that. They need to know that God took those messy pieces and you created something beautiful with them, and that you were a hot mess. It doesn't help people when we pretend that we're perfect.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Welcome to the show. I am so glad you're listening in here. Christmas is just around the corner, and I have put together a favorite 5 gift guide based on the favorite 5s of my past guests. It is a collection of guest favorites that will make terrific gifts for your favorite people this season. You can find the link in the show notes to get a guide for yourself. And if you're part of my Facebook community or if you're on my email list, you should have already gotten your guide. Check your inbox. I am so happy to bring you my conversation today with Latasha Ferguson. Latasha wears a lot of hats, but her most important role is daughter of God. And on the show today, she is sharing her story of her good father reaching out to her at her lowest point and asking her to walk with him. Latasha said yes, multiple yeses in fact, and she continues to every day. Latasha now helps women do the heart work so that they can overcome, own their story, and live authentically. You'll hear us talk about what heart work is, saying yes to God's call, overcoming shame, and then sharing your story, first for your own healing and then for someone else's. Here is my conversation with Latasha. Latasha, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for Johanna for having me here today. I'm so excited to finally chat with you.
Yes, you are a fellow podcaster, but you do lots of things, Latasha. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do and then the people in your life.
Yeah, so I am, a mom of 4 girls. I guess we'll start there with the family.
Yeah.
So ranging in age 22, well, she's almost 23. I can't believe it. All the way down to 7 years old. So 4 girls there. So that in itself, I mean, you're mom, so, is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And for parents who are thinking to themselves, well, when they become an adult, it's going to be so much less work. It is on one end, and on the other end, it's not. So that's still busy with those. I got a grandbaby boy who will be a year in another month, and he's just delicious. I love him. And so got that going on.
Can't believe you're a grandma.
I know. I can't believe it either.
Your skin is glowing through the screen at me, and I cannot believe you're a grandma. Wow.
I can't believe it. Well, it's a combination now. I'm sitting in front of a window and I got like this headband that just does some action here. So been married 15 years, and my husband and I are both educators. And so that's how we met. And we live in sunny Orlando, which today we just got a break in the weather. So it was a cool, and I know Northerners, everybody's living everywhere else, but here it's going to laugh. But we got a break in the weather, and it was like 60 degrees this morning. Oh my gosh. It'll get up to 88 today, but I'll take it. Because usually it's just like take your breath away in the morning. And so during the day by day, I'm a director of instruction. And so I work with principals in an online district, and then I podcast, moonlight as a podcaster. I also write and do, all the things there ministry wise that God has called me into that I absolutely love. I love my day and my nighttime gig.
You are a busy girl.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just my husband's just like, I don't know how you do all the things. I have no idea either. But I've actually I love doing when it's something that you love to do and you're passionate about, and you find time to kind of just make time for it. So
Yes, completely
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
One of the things that you call yourself is a heart work coach.
yeah.
Talk to me about what that means.
So been through a lot in my life, and I'm pretty sure those who have listening can say the same thing. And hey, if you've just lived in the last 2 years, you're listening to this, that means you have.
Yep.
The world has been through a lot, and we've had some common things that we've gone through. And just thinking about this last couple of years and talking to people and the world's shutting down, I heard a lot of friends say, I've had to deal with myself. I've had to
Mm,
look at myself. I've had to slow down and really think about what's going on the inside of me. And so for me, it happened before the pandemic and through life situations, trying to get through hard seasons, which I did and overcome, but still finding through different successes that I was still struggling in areas, that I was pretending in some areas. I was still dealing with some things I had packed down in my heart, and they were starting to bubble up and starting to impact my marriage and my relationship with my kids, and just really starting to, my trunk was full is what I call it. It was just only so much I could stuff in there. And so when I got to a point where I was almost to lose my marriage and work became more important, I mean, a lot of things just became more important because it distracted me from the work, right? Was when I really had to just turn and say, okay, what is going on? And so I had to do what I call heart work, which is look inward. And, the Bible talks about that so much, about us looking inward and dealing with our heart. And so that's what I had to do. And that's the hardest thing. It's easy to be busy. It's
sure.
easy to help other people, even, which, I would pride myself on that. Like, I'm helping my students. I'm an educator. I'm helping my family. I love them. I'm helping this. I'm helping all the people. But when it came to me and dealing with myself, when I was by myself, I just didn't really I did some of it, but a lot of the hard parts of it that I had hid for years, I had to look at it. I had to look at the ugly. I had to look at the dark. And so through that process of looking at the ugly, I thought, Johanna, that marriage would cure it and kids would cure it, and their emotions and being successful, quote unquote, all those things, which even working in ministry,
right.
For years that I did work in ministry as an associate pastor, I thought that would cure it. None of that cured it. It was still lingering. I think I just became better at covering it up. Better at pretending. And so when it came to a point where I couldn't do that anymore, and I had to look inward, and it was really at, are you practicing really what you preach? You're helping people out there, but you're in your house, in your heart, it's a hot mess. And, public success, private failure is what they call it. So really, in the face of all of that, humbly had to turn in and just, ask God, show me my heart, which is a scary prayer, because he will.
Yes.
He will answer that. He will answer that. And he'll answer it in ways that will show you the ugliness. It will, and at times I would say, God, couldn't you just tell me I had a jealousy problem? Did you really have to get me involved in an incident where I had to experience being jealous, where I had to experience being angry? I had to experience losing my patience or experience judging somebody. Did I really have to experience that? And for me, maybe it's just because of my personality, I didn't listen. Like, hey, you have a jealous problem. I had to see it. And so it was me, being involved in those incidents time after time and seeing this is not the other person. It's not them. It's not situation. It's you. And then just really asking God to, like David said, create in me a clean heart, renew the right spirit within me, help me with my ugliness. And so that whole process, which is, I would have rather it been, Johanna, an overnight process. That would have been great. 3 steps in 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
Would have been wonderful. quite convenient and would have fit into my schedule actually. But it was none of that. It was a long, and I'm still on the process. And I want to make sure I preface that it's not something that I did 3 years ago. And then now my heart's all better and cured, but it's an ever evolving, learning, growing journey of heart work.
Yeah, when you ask for God to show you those things, you have to be ready then because he will.
Oh my goodness. Yes, he
Yeah.
will. He definitely will. Oh gosh. Yeah, he def. Some of it's like a slap in the face, like, oh, and it stings and it's humbling. But then at the same time, I've learned I wasn't always there. At one time, I would get so down about it and beat myself up. And now I'm learning to, when I fall myself, like I was dealing with a situation a couple of days ago, and I just heard so loud, God's spirit just say, you have a choice. You have a choice, Tosh, right? Like you can get upset and you can let your feelings reel and get you all out of control and just be emotionally all over the place and let it ruin your whole day and everybody else around you. Or you can choose to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And yes, I do feel like that. It's real, but I'm not going to let it overtake me. And that came after a lot of work. And I still have to work at it because before it was just letting those things overtake me constantly. And so my hope is that through me telling my pitfalls and mishaps, and sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're hilarious, that when I share those things, that people will reflect and see themselves and really want to get to a point of authenticity that I desire as well, that what I say I'm living, that what you see on the outside is what the people on the inside are saying that I am the same way, right? That matters to me more now than ever. That if people out there say, she's so great, she's, a woman of God. I don't want, people to, interview my kids and my husband and say, well, what do you think about her? And they were like, she's none of those things. None of those things here. That matters. And so I'm hoping to help other women, other people look at themselves the same way, because our society is so external focused, so external focused. And so it's very distracting. So the hope is to get people to turn inward and realize what's inside matters more. It matters the most.
I love that. And I feel the same way. I want to be the same person on the inside, and I want to be sincere with how I'm acting on the outside.
Exactly.
Latasha, you said that you have been through a lot of things in your life. So we're going to rewind a little bit. And I want to hear about what your life looked like as a teenager.
Yeah. So a little bit, I grew up, my mom, I come from a mixed background. My mother's Korean. My dad is African-American, military family. Dad met my mom in Korea, his first station, very like storybook, and married her. Had my sister and I. And so we grew up kind of traveling all over everywhere. Landed when I was in high school. My dad retired and landed back in his hometown in Florida. And for me, it was just a shock in so many different ways. I grew up in a very diverse, multicultural, kind of enclosed and in a bubble, being on a military base. And so coming back to the US and being in civilian, I guess, school is what we call it, and being exposed to different things. It was just, my teenage years were a little tumultuous. I mean, my parents probably can use more colorful language and some other things that it was, and they could describe it in ways. For them as a parent, I'm sure it was very interesting for me. And so as a teenager, it was trying to find my place, trying to find who I was. I grew up in the church, so it wasn't like it was brand new to me. But, as a teenager, you already try to find your way, already trying to fit in. Who am I? Where do I belong? And then you got the boys aspect in there, and, that whole mixture, and trying to be a part of the cool crowd, and just all of it that comes all at once, during those years. And so for me, it was really rocky. It was very rocky. I came from a very old school kind of background where my parents were not very open with things that teenagers deal with. Yes, we prayed, we read scripture, did those things, but it wasn't a place where it was just very open, where my sister and I could talk about a lot. Now my parents and I talk about it, and we talk about how back then that's the best way they knew how to parent, right? Those are the tools that they had in their toolbox. And that's the best thing they did. And I know that now, being a parent, especially. And so met a gentleman who my parents vehemently opposed,
Mm.
kind of a bad boy. And here I was, this naive young girl, and met him, and he kind of was a football player. I mean, all the things. It was just like very check off all the boxes. Guy was not supposed to be with. And but I wanted to. That's what I wanted. And my nature as a kid, very strong will. My parents say up, I would say down. And teenage years, it got especially emphasized there. And so met this guy when I was 14, and my parents said no, but I secretly was dating him. And so kept this like secret relationship. And, we started getting involved in things that I should not have as I gotten older. He graduated. I found myself at 17 pregnant with my first daughter. And it was my senior year of high school. And I was very involved in high school. So I was in clubs and ran for office, did all kinds of things. I loved school. And so this side of me was kind of a totally different side than the other side. And so, I went back and forth again, trying to fit in. Where do I belong? And so here I was at 17, never expected this, that I would be with child. And so the last person people would expect. And so I hid my pregnancy for a while from my parents, and was so ashamed and was so hurt and in disbelief, I think, in denial for a long time. And almost kind of praying like, Lord, please, this cannot be happening to me. How did this happen? I mean, I knew how, but it's just, to me, it wasn't supposed to happen to me. And I had dreams to go to college, do all of these things. I was applying to college. I was, I was going to go out of state. I was going to major in business. I mean, just everything was lined up. That was just my personality, to have everything kind of lined up. And now a baby. And so when my parents did find out, after being pregnant for a few months, it broke their heart. Like, I can see right now my parents like sobbing, and they were so heartbroken at the news. What's going to happen? And, I remember them just saying like, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? Like, how are we, just all the questions, angry, upset. I mean, all of it. And I remember just all of us just crying. And at that point it was, my parents said, we're not happy about it, but we're going to be here for you. And we need you to rethink this relationship that you're in with this guy. And we don't think it's a good one, but we're going to help you with the baby, because the baby is, has nothing to do with your choices. It's innocent. So I did graduate high school, had my daughter, and went off to community college. I did not break up with a guy, because of course I knew better, and I was going to make it work. Now that we had a child, and I ended up having a second child by him. By this time, his parents were like, you all need to marry. My parents were like, no, still got a good relationship. And it wasn't until I just had this incident where it was a public display of great humiliation. It's so out of character, where I actually got into a fight, which, I tell people now, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to punch, like, or swing my fist, Johanna. I don't know how to fight. Right. But when you come to a place, I've learned now, looking back, where one, you're going totally in the opposite direction of where God wants you to go. You are running away from his purpose and his plan for your life. You are in a total state of, we don't like to use this word, rebellion, but that's what it was. When you are determined to do things your own way, you're in God's permissive will. And when you're in that stage, in that state, or that season, you are liable to do anything, right? And so when I see people act out of character, and I hear people on shows or on TV say, I don't know. I didn't think I would ever do that. I can understand, because I had allowed myself to get to a place where my security was so low, my self-worth was low. And here I was running after a guy, trying to get someone to love me and fill a space that only God could fill. And so there I was. I remember getting in this fight in this public place, upset, trying to make something happen that wasn't supposed to. And that was the end of, maybe that 6-7 years I was with him. And I remember crying, bawling my eyes out, walking to my car, humiliated again, crying, crying, crying. And I just heard a voice say, "Are you done? Are you finished? Are you done yet?" And I just remember going, crying again. And I heard it again, "Are you done?" And that for me was the pivotal moment, a turning point where I had to make a decision to either keep doing what I was doing. And if I wasn't going to die physically, I was going to die spiritually, mentally, emotionally. I was going to dry up and just be a shell of myself. Or I could make a decision to pivot, go another direction, and answer God's call. And I know that that term God's call seems so like mystifying and just big and on a stage and all those things. But for me, the call was to obey. That's it.
Yeah, he
Say
was
yes.
reaching out to you.
Exactly. Will you answer the call to obey and stop taking things into your own hands and doing your own thing? Will you say yes? So for me, it was, I picked up myself, my kids and everything and moved to another place. For me, physically, I needed to be in another place. Some people may see it as running away, but for me, I couldn't stay there. I couldn't be there. It was too long. The roots were too deep there. I just could not do it. And so for me, in order to heal and move on with my life, I had to move. And so that's really teenage years up until early college. And so I found myself, I'd moved, going to school, taking care of two kids. I was on welfare, working at the same time, doing all the things. And that was a period of about 4 or 5 years on my own, trying to make it through school. Had help with my family and all that. But that was the teenage years all the way through early adulthood.
Now, when you heard God calling you to obey, was your answer easy? Did you say yes right away? What did that look like?
Oh, no. No to both. No, not easy. No, not right away. Now looking back, I can see where God was trying to call me all along the way. Right. I can see very clearly, Johanna, the red lights, yellow lights, like the flashing, the things that friends had said to me, the things that my sister had said to me, stories that my parents had said about something doesn't look right or telling me, trying to encourage me. It all came clear. Now I can see it clearly. Back then, it was just, I was so dead set on doing things my way and proving everybody wrong, that this relationship was going to work, that I didn't want to hear the voice of God because it wasn't lining up with what I wanted, right? What I desired. And so even though his voice was familiar, I was not trying to hear that. And so for me, I always say it took me being on the bottom of a pit for me to say yes, because all I could do was look up. And I endured scars and wounds that I shouldn't have, that I didn't have to, because my yes took so long. But I'm thankful that those things didn't end my life. They didn't end my opportunity to say yes, that God kept chasing me. And I think sometimes we forget that the chasing sometimes does include chastising. I know, which is another word we don't like to hear, the gentle chastising or correction of God that we need. And I think it also depends on how hard your head is, which, by my story, you can tell was quite hard. So, so eventually, yes, the yes was there, but it is, I think, several yeses. We, say yes to this, Lord, I trust you. And then I felt God stretch me a little bit more. And will you say yes to this? And now will you say yes to that? And will you? And so I can see now that he held his hand out along the way, like we do with our kids, helping them cross the street, helping them get to where they need to go, making them feel secure, that sometimes I could take big steps and it was a big yes. And then other times it was a very tiny yes. It was a scary yes. It was a, tear-filled yes. Help my unbelief. Yes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a clean, like some people, I know their stories. I said yes. And then everything was great after that. For me, it was a series of yes.
What would you say to the woman who has something in her past that she's not proud of, which is probably all of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Number one, like you said, all of us.
Yeah.
All of us have, and I think sometimes we get to a point where we, because of television, because of social media, because of all these things, we can visually grade where we are compared to other people. But I would say, sis, friends, if you could pull back the curtains on people's lives, which we cannot, but if you could, there's a lot more behind those curtains than anyone's ever really going to tell you out loud. And so there is, shame tried to hang over me like a big, heavy cloak for years and tried to shut my mouth and keep me from telling my story. The odd thing is, the more successful I became, the more ashamed I became of my past. And I hoped and wished that it was something else and that I didn't have to deal with it. I didn't want to tell people, for example, they would say, how old are your kids? And I would say, oh, like now one's almost 23 and the other, and well, how old are you? I'm 40. And then I would see their mind start calculating. And that used to make me ashamed. And so I would hate to tell their ages, hate to tell my age. I mean, it was just, shame was had me all tangled up until finally I just had to say, I need to tell my story, even if it's only to one person. And what I found, Johanna, is the more I tell it, one, the enemy was trying to keep me in shame, but he was also trying to keep me from pointing glory back to God and pointing people back to God. Because when we don't tell our story, right? For me, I thought, well, I need to be able to show that I made it here. Like, I don't want anybody to know about my messy past. I don't want anybody to know like how I got here and how I made all those silly mistakes and how I was just this person I don't even recognize anymore. That's embarrassing. I'm not going to say that, right? But people need to hear that. They need to know that God took those messy pieces and you created something beautiful with them, and that you were a hot mess. It doesn't help people when we pretend that we're perfect and that we got to where we are because we were so perfect, that we got the marriage, the kids, all this, and we're sustaining all of it because we're so good and we're perfect. That doesn't help. People need to see the messy pieces. And I think first, before we even share, it's coming to grips with that. So one, everyone has some type of messiness. Let's not get into the comparison of whose is worse and better and all of that stuff. It's messy, right? And then two, we got to come to terms of it within ourselves, right? And look at ourselves first and really do that work of, what choices have I made that brought me into the messiness? And if it wasn't any choices that I made, maybe it was the choices of others. Do I need to forgive them, forgive myself? And again, we will not find freedom until we begin to share those parts of our story. And even if it's only with one other person, with two other people, let's start with those who are closest with us. And for some listening, it may be your spouse that you've never told certain parts of your life because you're ashamed. Let's start there. And then your girlfriend group that you've kind of pretended that your life was like this and you never did that. But really, there's a door that you never opened to anyone. Start there with sharing that. And if your armpits are getting sweaty as I'm saying that because you don't want to do that, it's making you uncomfortable, then ask God to give you courage and to be brave to share, and just start with the one. Write it in a journal if you have to. Very worst case, if you can't say it out loud, journal it. And that's what I started to do. I kept a secret little Word document, and I would just spill it all out on the pages on the Word document for years and just share it there till I had enough courage to then say it out loud. But what I found, and I assure everyone who's listening, that the more you share your story, the more you open up that trunk and let those things out, that door that you slammed shut with all those things behind it, the freer you'll be. The less times that you allow the enemy to close your mouth and tell you that that's so horrible and people are going to think differently of you, then you're not going to be free. You're holding your own freedom hostage. So that's what I would say to her.
There is a pastor I listen to who says we're all just a few steps away from blowing up our life.
Oh my goodness. I'd say millisteps for me sometimes. Yes.
So anyone
absolutely.
Who's feeling like,
yeah,
that would never happen to me.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's one word I don't use that. And my mother-in-law told me, for the moms out there too, she said, because I've dealt with things and being a parent too, that you say, oh, my kids will never do that. I'll never have to deal with that. I'll never. And she told me, she said, Tosh, That's one word. When my kids were younger, I eliminated from my vocabulary. She said, I love them, teach them the Lord, all of those things that I know I can do. She said, but I eliminated that. My kids will never. She said, I took it out because when Diane Doko Kim, she had said this when I spoke with her a few months back. She said, we live in a broken world, and all of us at one time or another will be cut, will interact with those sharp edges. It'll look different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that thing we have to realize is that one day we will come to a place where we won't have to deal with that anymore, once we leave this life. But while we're here, we're going to deal with brokenness in our own selves and the people around us and our children in this world. It's inevitable, right? And so when we eliminate that word never from our vocabulary and allow God to come in his grace to remove that fear from us that, oh my gosh, my life might fall apart. Oh my gosh, my marriage might fall apart. Oh my gosh, somebody might find out that I'm not what I thought I said I was. Let all of that go. Then we can live in a way that God wants us to, and knowing that this is not our home, that there will be a home that's greater than this. But in the meantime, we can take the steps that we can within our own selves to be brave and share our story and be who God has called us to be, because there's people out there who are dealing with what you've dealt with, and they need to hear your story, and they need to see your authentic self.
Along those lines, what is something, if someone's listening and they're like, yes, I do want to make a change. I do want to become more authentic. I do want to open the trunk. What is something small that they could do just to get started?
I'm going to go back to journaling, right? So I'd say two things, one small and one you can take tiny steps to as well. But one would be journaling. That is, whether you are a digital person, like I have a journal app that I love, that I use, or you can use the notes app on your phone. But as thoughts and things come to you, that you journal it and you make a practice every morning. I mean, if you're a nighttime person, you can do it at night, but I love the morning, getting up before everyone else. That morning time is when those thoughts want to come and haunt you about your past, about this, about, close your mouth, you're not this, you're not that. All those things want to start getting to you in the morning. But if you take those things and have that time where you pray and you read the word of God and you speak that over your life and you journal and put all those things down on paper. Sometimes for me, it's so painful, I can't even speak it. I have to write it. Whatever you want to do, but you want to get those things down onto paper and out and be able to reflect on those. I would say that's the time right there. It's impossible to do the work, the hard work, in the busyness of life. If you're so busy and you're just doing everything all the time, you got to have quiet, and you got to have time where you can read and reflect, and God can speak back to you through his word or through songs, whatever it is, but just sitting quiet. And I think for me, for me, that was so hard to do. It's one of the most difficult things to do, was to sit quietly with myself, because then I would have to face my thoughts. And I'd have to face all those things I don't want to face, because busyness could help me just deny them all the time. So I would say start there. That's something pretty free. You don't need to go anywhere to do it. You can start it right now if you want. And then the other thing I would say is eventually seek outside help, therapy. And I know that can seem very tangly. Thankfully, now there's some ways cost-wise, like through betterhelp.com. If you're a part of a ministry, sometimes like we have a ministry we're part of where they offer free counseling help, that you go and you seek those things and look it up, Google free counseling. And depending on your income and those things, if you can't afford it, that help is out there. But start with journaling and then eventually make it a goal to get into therapy, because you need someone else to talk to. At the very least, a trusted counselor, a wise, person who's older than you. If you can't get into therapy really quick, but I would seek both of those.
Okay. I am going to shift gears for us just a bit over to something a little lighter.
Yes.
I would love to know, Tasha, your favorite 5. What are 5 things that you're eating or wearing or watching right now that you're loving?
Oh my goodness. So, like I told you at the beginning, Johanna, this was so hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I love all the things. But okay, so I'll keep it brief. So one, the air fryer. Oh my
Ooh.
goodness. I have, and I can't even remember the brand right now, but it's like the XL something or another. It is a multi racks. So it has like 3, 4 racks in it. So we have a big family. So I couldn't do the traditional air fryer with just the basket. It just wasn't enough. So I looked and I found this air fryer that has 3 racks in it. And I can put like broccoli, chicken.
You do your whole meal in there.
Whole meal,
Wow.
potatoes. All in one. I love it. It's the best purchase. Every time I use it, I tell my husband, he's probably tired of me now. This is the best purchase of 2020. So with Black Friday coming up, I'd look for air fryer. It's XL. So I'll send you so you can put the
Do it.
actual
Yeah.
name in there. So get yourself, moms, anyone who's listening, an air fryer. You'll thank yourself. The other thing I like a 2-for-1 product, right? So I'm not huge on certain types of like protein bars or drinks. It's hard for me taste wise. I'm like, oh, but I know with the busyness, sometimes I'll go hours and not eat or whatever, and I need something quick. So Fairlife, I found Fairlife has a protein drink that tastes like legit chocolate milk.
I've had that.
Oh, you've
Yes.
had it. Yes, yes, yes. So I just recently found it probably a couple months ago and I'm in love. So if I have a busy day for the moms out there or whoever's listening, busy career women that just need something quick and the sugar is really low and it doesn't taste like chalk, Fairlife protein drinks. And they have them all flavors. I love chocolate.
Mhm.
Third thing I love is Publix. So for the Southerners, everyone said amen when I said that. So those who don't live in the South, when you come visit the South, you'll have to visit. I think they're from South Carolina down.
Yeah, we go to Publix on vacation. That's where we go.
Yes, yes. So Publix I love because it's an all, between their BOGOs to their deli and their bakery and all the things, and their excellent customer service. And they're not paying me for this, by the way, but Publix is one of my favorites. I can see it from my window here, which is probably not a good thing, but I'm there every day. The fourth thing I'll say is my Apple Watch. So it took me a while to get on the Apple Watch bandwagon. But since I got the SE. So the least I don't like spending lots of money on things that I just feel are unnecessary. But the SE, which came out last year, which is probably the most reasonably priced Apple Watch, a couple $100, it is worth every single penny. I like to be motivated through like little achievement rings and all those things like that. Shows me my steps and even motivates me like, hey, you did a good job yesterday. Keep going today. Things like that. And it sounds silly, but I like that. And it has little awards. And then it's just good when I'm on the go not to have my phone with me to keep me intact and let me know something's coming up in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And so I love, love, love the Apple Watch. And then a plug for the new iOS 15 too, because it has a lot of productivity things.
Okay.
So
Nice.
for people who are struggling with their phone and staying off their phone or being productive and the notifications are driving you bonkers, the new iOS 15 is all of that in a bag of chips. So look
Okay.
into
That's what I
that.
was going to ask. Is it worse to have it on your wrist?
To have it on your wrist, I thought at first like it would but now that the notifications and all that are so sophisticated, you can tell it what to notify you of and what not that you don't want to
Okay.
see, right? So you are total control of that. And at nighttime, I use the nighttime setting. I don't wear it to bed, but you can use the nighttime setting. I do that for my phone and all of that so that I don't have the stuff ringing and all of that.
Mhm.
But it's good though, because sometimes I'm like, oh, that's coming up. Or I have an email that's just not, I can just, hit trash really quick. So I love it. It does. I thought it would bother me, but I absolutely love it. And so the last thing I'd say is I'm a lover of books. I like a lot of nonfiction books. I've tried to start reading fiction books, but I will say my absolute favorite are Priscilla Shire's book studies or her Bible studies. Love, love, love. I'm currently reading Gideon,
Okay.
which is so good. And my other favorite from her is Discerning the Voice of God. But all of her books, she even has like a daily devotional that I can't remember the name of, but she's all of her studies, devotionals. That would be my fifth favorite. And I could give you 5 more things, but time will not allow that. So I'll stop right there.
And I love those. Those are great favorites. Thank you for sharing them.
Yeah, no problem.
Latasha, I have loved talking with you. You are amazing. I
Oh,
loved
thank
hearing your story.
you.
And I'm so glad that you've gotten to where you are now, where you are obediently sharing it for other people who need to hear it. It is so powerful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for just giving me the space. God is just faithful. So to the one that's just out there really struggling and wondering, and I would say God is faithful. Try him. Even if you tried him before and you feel like you've been let down in some way, try him again because he's faithful.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Latasha's message is really twofold. First, no matter what messiness you find yourself in or have been in the past, God is calling you to him. He wants a relationship with you. And second, sharing your story is so important, maybe for your own healing or maybe for somebody else's. It's clear that Latasha has broken through the shame that the enemy was trying to keep her in. She boldly shared her story with us, and that gives me so much encouragement to examine my own life and see what I need to start talking about. If you'd like to hear more from Latasha, check out her podcast, Overcome to Become. Everything we talked about can be found in the show notes for today's episode on girlstalkinglife.com, and don't forget to grab the Favorite 5 gift guide. Friends, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your stories and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. I'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in.